Capitalism and the Death Drive, by Byung-Chul Han. What we nowadays call growth, is in reality random, cancerous proliferation. We are currently living through a frenzy of production and growth that seems like a frenzy of death. It is a simulation of vitality that conceals a deadly impending catastrophe. Production increasingly resembles destruction. Capitalism rests on negation of death. Capital is accumulated as a defense against death, against absolute loss. Death is what accounts for the compulsion of production and growth. In capitalist societies, the dead and the dying are less and less visible. But death cannot simply be made to disappear. If, for instance, factories no longer exist, then work takes place everywhere. If mental asylums disappear, then madness has become normal. It is the same with death. If the dead are no longer visible, a rigor mortis has extended over all of life. A life without death, which is what capitalism strives to achieve, is what is truly dead. Performance zombies, fitness zombies, and Botox zombies, these are manifestations of undead life. The undead lack any vitality. Only life that incorporates death is truly alive. The mania for health is the biopolitical manifestation of capital itself. The suicide bomber knows that, immediately after the attack, his photograph will circulate in the media, and he will then receive the attention he had previously missed out on. A suicide bomber is a narcissist with an explosive belt. Thus, terrorism can be understood as the ultimate form of authenticity. Death, understood as the biological end of life, is not the only, or only true, form of death. Death can also be understood as a continuous process in which one gradually loses oneself, one's identity over the course of the lifetime. In this way, death may begin before death. The neoliberal system of rule is structured in an altogether different fashion. The system preserving power is no longer oppressive but seductive. It is no longer as clearly visible, as it had been under the disciplinary regime. There is no longer a concrete opponent, no one who is taking away the freedom of the people, no oppressor to be resisted. Out of the oppressed worker, neoliberalism creates the free entrepreneur, the entrepreneur of the self. Today, everyone is a self-exploiting worker in his own enterprise. Everyone is both master and slave. The class struggle has been transformed into an internal struggle against oneself. Those who fail, blame themselves and feel ashamed. People see themselves, rather than society, as a problem. The ideology of community, or of a collaborative commons, leads to the total commodification of community. Simple, purposeless friendliness become impossible. In a society in which everyone rates everyone else, friendliness is commercialized. Once it begins to sell communism itself as a commodity, capitalism has reached its culmination. Communism as a commodity, that spells the end of any revolution. Smart power closely follow the contours of the psyche, it flatters the psyche instead of repressing or disciplining it. It does not force us to be silent. Instead, it constantly prompts us to communicate, share, participate, to express our opinions, desires and wishes and to narrate our lives. We are confronted with a technology of power that does not negate or suppress our freedom, but that exploits our freedom. Transparency is a state in which all not knowing is eliminated. Where transparency reigns, there is no space for trust. Exposure is exploitation. The one who is fully exposed is subjected to limitless exploitation. The overexposure of people maximizes economic efficiency. The transparent customer is the latest inmate, the homo sacer of the economic panopticon. We communicate intensively, almost compulsively. Lapses in communication seem unbearable to us. They reveal an emptiness that must be bridged with more communication and more information. Datism is the result of renunciation of meaning and context. Data is meant to fill the vacuum of meaning. The entire world disintegrates into data, and we gradually lose sight of any broader contexts. In this sense, datism and nihilism are two sides of the same coin. If we turn to selfie addiction, we find that it also has little to do with self-love. It is simply an expression of an idling, narcissistic ego that can never come to rest. Inner emptiness leads to a vain attempt to produce oneself. This attempt at self-production must fail. The only thing that is reproduced is the emptiness itself. Selfies are manifestations of the self as an empty form. They intensify the feeling of emptiness. The world becomes merely a pleasant backdrop for the ego. Hypercapitalism turns all human relations into commercial relations. It deprives human beings of dignity, replacing it with market value. The world has become one gigantic department store.